for your time. We know time is valuable. And what I'd like to introduce is the first of which we hope are many webinars brought to you by ZeroDayLab. This one in particular is important to me. It's my first that I've actually done at ZeroDayLab, having just joined them. And we're going to be looking to the subject of how does effective GRC enable your business? We're going to look at three domains within this area, ensuring that GRC is an enabler, not a blocker for your organization, and hopefully gaining that support and confidence of your board. We're actually looking at the detail of how you would sell security to your board and, again, gain their confidence within you to deliver the right messages at the right time. And I think right out at the top of the webinar, we're going to be looking at the return of investment on security. So the value adds that it can drive any business to achieve. First and foremost, let me introduce myself. So I am Daniel Wood. I joined ZeroDayLab or the dizzy heights of just over a month ago now, but I've got a substantial history in the information security industry, working for such organisations such as Merlin Entertainments, Walt Disney, Freshfields, and actually having spent around 18 years in the legal industry and various other organisations implementing ISO 27001 frameworks. More recently, joining ZeroDayLab as their head of governance, risk and compliance within the consultancy space. At this moment in time, I'd like to hand over to my esteemed colleague, Steve.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Steve Giachardi. I'm the Information Security Manager here at ZeroDayLab. And similar to Dan, I've been working in IT for way too long, I think. I've done local government work, IT management in local government, networking, building servers, domains, did lots of training with young people. And I switched up to information security when everybody was moving from on-prem to the cloud. Got my CISP, and last year I got my CISA, and I'm here as a consultant with ZeroDay, helping secure business. And I'll hand over to my colleague, Kevin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome today. Excuse the really old picture of me looking much younger. Yeah, I'm an information security consultant working with these guys for ZeroDayLab and focusing on helping businesses achieve their governance, risk and compliance goals. We do a lot of work enabling businesses through that 27001 journey. I'm an experienced data protection officer, and I used to lead a global team working with for compliance solutions for regulated industries. A lot of work also in the legal industry, and I think myself and Dan probably have crossed paths previously. But I've got specialities in things like knowledge management and business process and change management.
Brilliant, thanks guys. So to allude to what the guy said, welcome. We're going to be looking at three particular areas of interest today. First and foremost up front is the business enabler. There's often a lot of stigma in regards to security, so I'm sure most of you on the call right now have felt the pain of feeling like security is always giving you the no answer. No, you can't do this. No, you shouldn't do it like that. What we're hoping to provide to you is an insight of which some of you may or may not be aware, that we can actually change that stigma of being the blocker into that business enabler. And I'd like to start there and really bring Steve on and introduce Steve once again to give us his insights and thoughts on really making that GRC enabler. Steve?
Thanks, Dan. And I agree with you. It's like GRC should be seen as more of an enabler to a business than a blocker. And it's a really interesting concept. But for me, the more I've looked into GRC, the more I think that it's an absolutely essential component in ensuring that businesses are able to function, especially if they want to function securely. But for me, the thing that's important is it the strategy that you have to have in place to enable you to be able to have good governance? Because if you haven't got that strategy, you don't know where the business is going, and you don't know then the governance that you're going to need to be able to help the business to achieve its goals. So really, governance has to be almost driven by the board, because it's the board that's going to be setting the direction that the business is going. And then once you know and understand the direction that the business is going, you can start to put the governance around it. Like, for example, if a business wants to break into a new territory or open a marketplace, for example, it's really essential that it understands the laws and the regulations, so the external governance that are at work in that marketplace. It takes me back to, there's a client that I worked with a couple of years ago, and in the wake of GDPR, there was a ruling in Germany that all images and pictures of any new cars that were being sold in that country had to be labelled with their emissions rating. Now, this client I was consulting with had to re-engineer a software solution to be able to meet that regulatory requirement in order to be able to operate in that marketplace. And for me, that's an example of where the good governance, because they went out and did their understanding of what was required to be able to work in that marketplace. The governance in that instance, far from being a blocker to the business, provided them with the solution to be able to avoid the risk of breaching German regulatory requirements and a potential hefty fine for non-compliance. And through that governance, the business was able to trade in Germany and won some very high value clients as a reward. And it was understanding that business goal and the strategy that the board had was so important in being able to drive the governance. And as you can see, it sort of pulled the rest of it all together for them as an organization. I don't know, what do you think, Kevin? Do you think that strategy drives governance, or do you think it's the other way around?
I completely agree with you, Steve. I think definitely strategy does drive governance, and what governance then provides is a framework for that business to operate within. So it effectively provides the boundaries and the security processes for which a business can then expand and meet its goals. And it comes back to that point that Dan raises, is how that enables a business to shift from a security says no response to one of yes if. And the if is if it can operate within the security framework that we've laid out that enables our business to grow and remain safe. It speeds up the ability to deploy new services and new products and new capabilities, because you're meeting an existing effective security framework, as opposed to trying to understand what security would look like from scratch every time you want to develop your business. So it is effectively enabling you to be quicker to market and to outstrip the speed of your competitors. So absolutely, you do need to understand that strategic objective, but it is absolutely enabled by, it's like bowling. You're putting up the guardrails for the to protect the business and keep them on a steady path, as opposed to introducing additional risk to your business.
I like the idea.
I love that. I love that synopsis. And again, both extremely valid. With my I guess my more cynical hat on, I'd like to look at enabler as slightly different as well. As we know, good and effective governance, risk and compliance comes with controls, and controls within policy, controls within process, and those controls, to ensure the effectiveness of how those controls and those processes are working within your business, should have objectives set to them. And the enablement of measuring effective processes will actually benefit an organization further, because it will identify areas for improvement. And as we know, frameworks such as 27001 and NIST and most ISO frameworks have a true understanding and delivery and push of continual improvement through a continual improvement plan. The fact that you can identify through objective and key performance indicator measures that there is room for improvement will not only allow your business and enable your business to do more, but it will enable it to do it potentially quicker and thus saving time and potentially money. So it actually enables your business to improve. My view of security in any organization is never a no, it's a yes, but please consider. And that's, you know, that for me almost removes the stigma of security and IT to a certain extent, because IT is IT is really the founders of where most of us started our careers. And it's never a no anymore, which is great. It's so positive. And actually security is becoming more of a positive because of that nature. And guys on the phone, and on the session, what we'll do is we'll have a question and answer session at the end. So if you do have any questions on any of the subjects we're going to discuss today, please put them in the chat. We have Amy, who's our head of marketing, on the call, who will take those questions from you, and we'll work through those at the end, question by question. So please feel free to type any comments, any questions in the chat. I feel like I'm on YouTube here. Please comment below. But yeah, please do that, and we'll gather those up at the end, and we'll answer those. If you're comfortable in asking them at the end yourself, please do so. Please come off mute and not all at once, obviously. But we'll go through those. So, guys, thank you. Insightful in regards to how we make business really realize the benefits of having effective GRC. So, look, what I'd like to have a look at is our next domain, and that is really how to sell security to the board. Recent surveys have identified that the boards don't really understand what security really means. And if I may, gents, I'm gonna pick this one up first. Now, I think it's probably the most trickiest and obviously the most the scariest subject to approach. You as an IT manager with security remit in your job, or an information security manager, have to stand in front of effectively the owners or the very top level of your business, and it's a daunting prospect. For me, it's selling a story, it's selling a journey, and enabling your board to really identify with you. First and foremost, you need to identify with them. So for me, it's about knowing and understanding what your board is about, as Steve alluded to earlier. Strategy. What's their focus? What's their main delivery? And it really is your sales pitch, your time to shine on that stage to ensure that they give you the buy-in. And that isn't just financial, it's also their time. Because within the ISO framework, what it says is that you have your top level management buy-in, their support, their governance, ultimately driving down the business. And if you can really identify an individual, know your stakeholders, know your board, understand what makes them tick. Is it financial? Is it risk? What keeps them awake at night? Identifying an individual on the board that you can maybe leverage as your champion, as your voice on that board. Identify with them, sell them the message, gain their support, and then they will support you during that board presence, where you are effectively asking for money and investment of their time to drive your security strategy forward. Now, for me, it's all around aligning your information security strategy to the board's operational goals and their strategic direction of the business. There's no point going down one rabbit hole when the business actually wants focus elsewhere, because you're not going to gain that support. So for me, it's really around identifying who your audience is, know and understand them, know and understand their levels of their levels of understanding of what security is. Do we need to start with the basics? Do we need to notch it up a few levels? But again, try and find that individual champion on the board that you can really have those conversations with. Make sure that they support you, because one person on a board supporting you, you're halfway there, because they will listen to their peers. It's not always about money either. It's about their time. Kevin, I'm not sure your thoughts on that, but any words of wisdom for us, sir?
Well, indeed. I mean, I completely agree with you in terms of how you need to engage with the board, and I think there's a key element in there around the real benefits of introducing a risk management framework that is broader than what we often talk about when we discuss security. You know, we talk about cyber threats and data loss and fines, but often extending that to be more holistic across the business, to be able to understand business risks as well, using that same assessment process and that same methodology, to start to compare those the risks and the potential impacts of a malware attack versus, are we going to be ready to launch a new product or open a new market? And I've not met an IT team that wasn't overstretched or under-resourced. You know, it seems to be, you know, the de facto state of IT teams, and that means effective planning has to go in place, and effectively defining what that roadmap looks like for IT and security, identifying the highest value opportunities and risks that they need to deliver as a business. And I think when you consider that, and when you're selling that vision to the board, with that approach in your kit bag, you're likely to have a budget that is less reliant on guesswork. Because you're assessing things in a common way, you're understanding the best opportunities versus the greatest risk, then you can avoid more effectively, and we see this quite commonly, the unplanned security costs that crop up somewhere along the space of a year, and you know, people are panicking. Where do they get that budget from? It's not something that's been considered. The impact of fixing that problem has not been really assessed or budgeted for, and now it's August, and what do we do? So yeah, that's my experience of the situation. Steve?
Yeah, I can relate to that. There's many times we've been in that situation where we've been trying to help clients who have suddenly discovered a security nightmare. And I think something that Dan said right at the beginning of all of this was alignment of the strategy and the governance. And this plays in very interestingly with where you took it, Kev, where you said to look at that broader picture and that bigger understanding of where the business is, of the threats that are facing that business out there in the business world. And it's trying to align security to meet those objectives is where we as security professionals, when we're talking to the board, are facing this huge, almost like a gulf. It's well and good saying, yeah, we need to have information security in place, but it's going to cost you 170, 180,000 pounds to do it, and then there's a 40,000 pound recurring license that we're going to have to pay every year. And when you're saying this to the board, all the board is hearing is those figures. And it's about taking those figures and putting those into the context of what it's actually saving you from in the event that you as an organization suffer a security incident. And the only way you can do that is by taking into account this, as you sort of alluded to, Kev, the new product that you want to introduce to a new marketplace. Look at that and assess it. What risks is that going to introduce to the business, and how can we best mitigate those risks? How will spending this £150,000 reduce the risk of the opportunity or the likelihood of that risk from occurring within our business? because I think there's figures that have come out that are showing that the average cost of a data breach to businesses, because you've got to think it's a long tail cost, is somewhere in the region of 4.25 million. And that was an IBM study that came out at the beginning of this month. So investing 150,000 or spending 4.25 million over the course of 3 years to recover from a data breach. You tell me which will be the better investment. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
You know, it does. I chuckle, and because I think there was so much. There was so much scaremongering when the fines were first announced for GDPR. It's 4% of your global annual turnover, or 20 million euros, and I think it's not about scaremongering to the board, but it is about that realization. I think what we've seen and what's evident is that nobody has actually been pinched for that full whack of those fines. So for me, it's ensuring that there is still that realization that this could happen. We are seeing more and more, and actually, we're not seeing, unless you're in read particular publications, we're not seeing the hard-hitting front page tabloid whatever newspapers now saying there's a breach here and these have been fined. The risk is still there. The scaremongering has almost gone. Boards have now sat back and gone, oh, do you know what? Nobody's getting fined for this, so why are we investing? The realization is that it is still there, but by just having an information security management system deployed and implemented and effectively managed, it's evident that the fines are there, and they are cut in half. They reduce any potential fine. It's interesting to hear that I've read stats that last year it was 3.6 million. This year it's 4.2. It will continue to grow because it's not just about that initial impact. It's around the recovery, and it's around the reputational recovery as well. You only need to look at the likes of some major high street names out there in the market that are still trying to recover, still trying to win back the trust. And for me, I guess as a final point, unless you are a technology company, my recommendation is maybe not always talk tech. Yes, we have the great foundations of some phenomenal cybersecurity tech stack out there, and I don't need to reel off the names. We all know who they are, but the board don't want to hear about that. They want to hear what happens and how much can I be impacted if something does happen, and how much will it cost to prevent. And let's not say prevent. And if a board ever says prevent, please try and move them off of the prevention subject, because it's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. For a lot of organisations, the when might be stretched out further down the line should they invest wisely. But everybody's a target, no matter what industry you're in, more targeted than others. So I think it's a realisation of the risk is still there. The fines are still there. They're just not slapped in everybody's face right now. I think that a lot of boards are almost getting a bit more comfortable to say that, well, we haven't been hit yet, so why? Well, if you are, how do you respond? What's the impact? And again, effective GRC is driving down the likelihood of that impact happening, the realization and the response to that, and that's the investment.
I think it should be noted, though, Dan, that even though those fines aren't making the headlines, things like the SEC are fining organisations that do suffer from breaches, particularly if they don't, or if when the SEC goes in and takes a look and decides that the controls that the business had in place weren't up to spec. So it's important, and I think that what we haven't mentioned is that failing to invest is just holding your hand up and saying, come and have a go, basically.
I think it's a really good point, Steve. I mean, that point on the slide there, you know, the standing still makes you an easy target, and that is the unfortunate truth. And I don't think anyone felt it more painfully than the NHS when they realised that their XP system was vulnerable to WannaCry, and 34% of their trusts got smashed, and everyone lost the opportunity for their appointments to happen. You know, and just to fix that problem in one go was, I think it was 150 million over 3 years, and they're still migrating out those old systems because it wasn't viewed as a continuous activity to stay safe and stay up to date and be protected. You know, and it comes back to that painful reality that we experience regularly when we ask a client, you know, have you got security systems in place? Yes. Do you patch your systems? Yeah, sometimes.
But this again, Kevin, I think this all comes back to the strategy, and this needs to be driven by the board. And this is where we as IT professionals can go into the board and we can say, look, we need to be investing in this, because if we don't keep our hardware up to date, we are leaving ourselves vulnerable to backdoor attacks, this, that, and the other. And this is how we can then, through that good governance, put in place patching policies, put in place user policies, put in place hardware refresh policies. And even though all of us are now migrating to the cloud, we can still have, for example, gold builds and standard builds that we should be using for our VMs and all the rest of it. Again, I love it, Kev. It's got to be strategy and governance. The two have to go hand in hand.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think most boards, they're wising up to the fact that no spend in this domain, whether it be on technology, on time, or putting in effective governance frameworks, effective training and awareness to your employees. You know, I remember a conference I went to, and one there was a gentleman that took to the stage. And one of his comments always resonated with me, and still does to this day. And I hope the phrase is not copyrighted, because I'll probably owe him a lot of money. But it's about the human firewall, and your employees and your colleagues. So everybody on the call right now, they have colleagues that are open to an attack. And do they know what that looks like? Do your board look and know what a potential phishing email looks like? So implementing and gaining their support, that could be another avenue. And you know, I'm sure there's plenty of people on the call right now that run phishing simulations within their organization, and if they don't, well, it's a great recommendation to do so. And I guarantee you that at least one of your board members will be caught out with a phishing simulation email. I've done it myself in other organizations. And what a way to sell. If you are the owner or the director or the spearhead of our organization, and you, as that spearhead, are falling for these quite simplistic phishing emails where you are responding to emails, or, I mean, no, I very much doubt a CEO of an organization will quickly hop off to Amazon and use his personal card to do it and buy £100 worth of vouchers. But I've seen it happen. The board respond to potential phishing emails. And if we can't sell that to the board to say, if you're falling for it, imagine how many of your employees are falling for it. Train, educate, human firewall. We've got the technology to back it up. Let's not talk tech to the board. We've got the technology. We know what the technology is. But if the people using it don't have that support and understanding of what's in front of them, then everybody's at risk. Make it real to them. Absolutely make it real to them. You are a victim of this. Give me some money and I'll help you stop it. Give me your time, I'll help you stop it. It's a sales pitch, an elevator sales pitch. You've got 15 minutes. And quite happily, it's got to be short, sharp, snappy, because you've quite often only got 15 minutes of their board presentation time, and you're in there. Don't baffle them with lots of information. Here's how much it could cost you. in fines, in reputational damage. Here's how much we can spend to support and improve our posture. You do the maths. And if somebody's got your back and your voice in there because you have targeted a champion within that board, you're onto a winner. Lengthy subject. It's often the one that really I think most people struggle with, because they're not always susceptible to talking at that level of the business, depending on how big your organization is. My view is that, yeah, absolutely, know and understand your audience, talk their language. Anyway, guys, any questions on that one, guys? As again, please feel free to drop anything in the chat there specific to one of us, or any other subject that you want to address that we're covering today. This is going to help you sell security to the board. So we've strategically put this in last just to help you guys out. So the return of investment on effective security. I'm going to pick on somebody. Come on, Steve. What do you think here, sir?
What do I think? The return on investment on security is well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to fall back on that IBM survey, because the thing that really jumps out from that survey, and I'd advise everybody on this call, go and have a look. It's called The Cost of a Data Breach 2021. And the thing that they really point out is that of the 25 cost factors that can either amplify or mitigate a breach cost, it was compliance failure that had the biggest impact on the amount of costs that an organization was faced with in the wake of a data breach or a security breach. So the difference between organizations that had invested in good compliance, good governance, and companies that hadn't was somewhere in the region of 50% higher impact from that data, from that security incident. Now you can't possibly go into your boardrooms and say, right, it's going to cost us, as I said earlier, £150,000 to invest in this security. The only way to be able to sell that return on that investment is to use the phrase that Dan pointed out earlier. When we have an incident, if we have got the good controls in place that we will have through this investment, if we have got the good training in place, which we will have through the governance that we're going to put around those controls that we've got in place, if we have mitigated and understood all the risks that we're facing as a business, which we will have because we'll have taken Kevin's approach and we'll have done a full top-down risk assessment of the marketplace, of the people within our organization, of the people that we're selling to, of our suppliers who are helping us to push this product into the marketplace. That 150,000 that we're asking you, the board, to give us and invest in this is potentially going to save us somewhere in the region of £3.5 to £5 million. That's the return on investment that you're going to have through improving the security, through investing in the security, through good governance, through good risk assessment. And as regular viewers all know, I always say that security begins with A, and you need to have a full understanding of your assets. Yes, my hobby horse. And through that, you can then have, this is all aligned to that business strategy, which is what the board should be passing out to you as the IT team to say, this is where we want to go, this is what we want to do, how do we get there, and how do we get there securely? That's a long and complicated answer, Dan. Does that answer your question?
I think yes, and somewhat more. Absolutely, and look, I think you're right. The return of investment can be seen in various different ways. It's not all about not necessarily about seeing a revenue increase, although there is evidence that that's there, and I think Kevin will come on to that shortly. I alluded to something earlier in the first subject, that making business an enabler. Now, these three subjects specifically tie in. They're almost one domain, as it were. But a return of investment is not just monetary value. It's around the saving of time. It's around working smarter. And if you do have effective controls in place with objectives set, that you can set key performance indicators to monitor the performance of your processes, it could identify the return of time. And everybody knows time equals money. However, time in somebody's day, if we identify a process, can be shortened. And again, the brilliant thing about ISO NIST frameworks is that they are not there to have your business mold around them. The controls that are out there, the controls have to work for the organization, and you mold the control around your organization. And by doing that and then measuring the effectiveness of those controls through its performance, you can indicate where there is time to be saved, and time equals money. If we can do 5 things in a day instead of 2 things in a day because we are working smarter, that leaves us X amount of time at the end to do more things and driving more value and making a more value add within our department. So 2 concepts of return of investment. Kevin?
Well, I'm going to add a third to those 2 concepts, which is our marketplaces. They're evolving every day, and everyone is becoming more security savvy, and risk management extends beyond the boundaries of our own business now. So we're hearing a lot, and we're spending a lot of time working on how to effectively control risk in third parties, even extending that to fourth parties. And as a supplier to other clients, other businesses, in a B2B environment, often these days the price of admission to a marketplace is a badge. It is, I am ISO 27001. I have effectively implemented NIST controls. I mean, just as an example, I mean, if you want to work for within the framework of the UK government, it starts with cyber essentials and works its way up, dependent on what services that you're offering. You know, the minimum is a cyber essentials badge. So if you're going to invest that work in protecting yourself and reducing the potential risks and impacts of the attacks as Steve describes, then also leverage that and all of that hard work and get those badges, enter those marketplaces. I mean, we probably spend most of our time working with clients who come to us saying, in order for us to continue to work with the clients we already have, or for us to be considered in this marketplace by this type of client, in all sorts of different industries, then we have to be able to demonstrate that we are aligned or certified, quite commonly, to 27001. It seems to be the de facto standard, especially across Europe, that businesses are expecting. And that's the start of the conversation. And I think another one of those things that in terms of the processes that that Dan was talking about, which potentially reduces costs and increases value out of your security framework, is the cost and time it takes to complete an RFP. We all get them. They take a long time. Nobody wants to do them. There, you get the endless security questions and mitigation processes. If you've got that in place already, if you have an ISO badge, for some businesses, that's enough. We wouldn't recommend that. You know, dig in, find out, make sure those lovely controls are in place, and you can see some KPIs and evidence. Having said that, with clients that I have worked with, we've been able to take that process of onboarding a new client from 6 months to 4 weeks because of the effectiveness of the ISMS and meeting the expected requirements of often big, valuable clients with very deep pockets. So it can always be optimized. And especially even if it's not a mandatory requirement, being able to demonstrate to your clients, to your partners, and to your suppliers that you are security focused has a far-reaching effect to bring everybody up to a new level, and differentiates you in that marketplace to say, yes, you are focused on keeping my data safe, you are focused on making sure that you are available to me, and you are focused on making sure that your processes are always going to be highly functioning.
And I think you touched on a key point there as well, because it is around the building of trust, and the fact that you have something independently certified outside of your organization enables and builds on that trust that a client has that you will keep their data safe. I've seen it. I've seen absolute evidence where I am pitching for work or supporting an RFP. Very first question on the questionnaire: are you 27001 certified? Are you 27001 aligned? There's a difference. The difference is, are you willing to pay that little bit extra to gain a badge? Alignment is no different, in my view. It is, I've had it externally checked to make sure. Steve, any final thoughts on return of investment?
No, and I think the pair of you have really kind of pointed out the benefits of certification. We're not. I just want to make it clear that we're not here saying, right, everybody run off and get your ISO certification in place, because that's not what we're doing. What we are sort of saying is that it's a way of showing a return on the investment that you've made in time and money and effort to put those security controls in place within your organization. And if it's done well, it shouldn't be a huge leap to go and get ISO 27001 or Cyber Essentials Plus if you were to be looking to move into the into working with local government. But the real benefit is, and the thing that you're getting from having that certification, is that you get that external audit of the controls that you have in place. And this is what gives people the comfort and the trust that your security is good security, is because it's been certified. And one of the trickle-down effects of that security is, as Kevin said, it trickles down to your suppliers, because they then have to deliver into you in a way that meets the standards that you prescribe for them. But you don't have to be ISO certified for that. You can be security conscious without being certified, and you can still, through your governance, through your strategic vision, you can still deploy those controls out to your third parties and say, stuff that comes into us has to meet X, Y, Z controls. Absolutely.
If I had a drink, I'd say cheers. cheers to that. Okay. So look, I think today we've been through quite a lot, and thank you everybody for listening. Just to wrap up before we go on to the abundance of questions that I've seen pop up, but feel free to continue adding. I think for me, the top conclusion there, it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's absolutely a journey, and it starts with your understanding and your vision of what good security looks like in your organization. Every organization is different, but you have to start somewhere. You start somewhere with your own vision. As long as that vision is sold to the board, and hopefully we've given you some insights on how to do that, you start that journey. If you try and sprint to the end, there will be hurdles that you miss or that you hit. So treat it as a marathon. It's an ecosystem. It's always evolving. As we've alluded to, there are some fabulous technologies out there that help with security, but they are not the full answer to protecting you. So when you're talking to the board, they don't want to be baffled and bogged down with technology talk their language, know and understand how they communicate. Gain that champion if you can. And lastly, effective security should never be a tick box exercise. Don't do this because client A says you need something. You need to do it in order to enable your business to make that next step of being more protective, with effective governance, with effective risk management, and with effective compliance. Any final thoughts, gents?
Well, yeah, align it to the business strategy, please.
Yeah, of course. No rabbit holes to jump down, Steve, I think is the message. Kevin?
Just on that point, the tick box exercise, achieving one of those badges, as Steve pointed out, doesn't necessarily make you safe. It means that you've done enough to achieve a standard, but making that lifestyle choice to be a security first business is what will keep you safe.
Completely agree. So for those on the call now, we'll go into some questions. And as we mentioned throughout the marketing here, we are offering a discount to welcome me to the organisation and embed me into the team with Steve and Kevin. At this point, Amy, I need to say thank you to you for organising this and changing it at very last notice. So thank you. I don't know if you want to pop on and say a quick hi and. So thank you ever so much for putting these together. For those on the phone for this one, the audience here, we will be doing more of these. But right now, I want to open it up very quickly to see if there are any questions from the audience.
And you've all got my email, so please feel free if you have any questions later on, if you'd like to email me. But yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask the team.
Yes, hi, this is Yasser Fahmi, the Head of Security Governance at the National Bank of Egypt. I just have a quick question, please.
Of course.
I would like to thank you first for organizing this event. It is very useful and contains a lot of good information for us. My question is, as you know, as part of the international standards for security, like ISO 27001 and other standards, it requires also to provide security awareness for executive management and board as well. So you know that the board and executive management has or have a specific nature, or they are having a top level positions that they don't have time and they don't have that much, detailed knowledge about security and so on. How can we provide security awareness for the board and the executive management in a way that is effective and at the same time easy for us to achieve its objectives?
What a fabulous question to start with, because I think where we've all felt pinch points on trying to deliver effective awareness programs often starts with you're trying to deliver a security training and awareness program to a security organization. That's a personal that's a personal experience of mine. We don't need this. We do this for a living. And why are you teaching me to suck eggs? Quite rightly, at the board level as well. We don't have time to do this. We have a business to run. And I think the message for me there is the business will run more effectively if you know and understand how to protect it more. The business will be better protected if you take the guidance of which I'm trying to show you. And it doesn't have to be, and you don't have to sit on a training course, a PowerPoint click through of slide after slide after slide, teaching you about good working practices. There are some fabulous products and fabulous consultants out there that will absolutely help, and 3 of them are on this call, but we'll move on to that. But there's such an effective way that is short, sharp, and precise that will take 5 or 10 minutes of somebody's time. I think for me, if you make education about the person and relevant to their role, don't, Mr. Director, don't fall for a phishing email, please, but you can delve into the business with a little bit more guidance. Make it about their family. Involve, are your kids safe online? Well, if we teach you how to, Mr. Director, on how to make sure your kids are safe online, if you take 5 elements of what we've just telling you to tell your family members, and you use that in your own organization, then you are better protecting your organization. Steve, Kevin, I'll open that up to you as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you for attending, and thank you for the question. And it is a really pertinent question, because the board are probably the most reticent to take on any security controls that you put in place. I know that the experience I've had where I was working for a global company, I implemented an MDM solution, and the first call I had was from the CTO who was annoyed because he was trying to access over public Wi-Fi some corporate documents, and I'd set a rule that said he was out of bounds and that wasn't allowed. The controls that I think, the way that I would approach the situation that you're looking at is to use OSINT and to show the executives the amount of exposure that they have on the internet and how that then leaves them at risk for extortion through phishing emails, through people understanding and being able to then tailor emails to them based on the evidence that you've uncovered out there in the world on the internet, without doing any more than just putting their name into a Google search. If you can, it's almost like you're scaring them into security, but if you can show them what their digital footprint is out there in the world, and then say, right, now this is where we need to control you, and this is how we can keep you safe for us and the organization. Kevin, is there anything that you want? Because I know you've been doing a lot of security awareness at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're completely right, Steve. And I would back that up. In that the senior management team, your board, your directors, your CEO, they are both the primary target. You know, if you're whale fishing, you're trying to get to that person. They are also the mechanism by which you will manipulate the staff. I've received them even at ZeroDayLab saying, here's an email from the CEO and it's got their name on it, and you look at it and you go, is that correct? Recently dealt with one where a client had the same thing, new starter, email from the CEO. And you're right, that information is available on the internet in a number of different formats. And it can be found. It's not just on the company website. If you know, anyone can go online and find out who's the CEO and a board member, or a senior member of a company, and use that name, work out what the email format is, use them in a campaign. And I think bringing that home to a senior team that says you are the target and you are also the weapon is very important. And that feeds back to exactly what Dan was saying, is make it relevant to the person that you're talking to. They're not just doing the same security training as everybody else. It's worth investing in tailoring the awareness training for the senior team to make it relevant to them, because it's slightly different.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I hope the three of us have in some way, shape or form answered your question and given you food for thought on how to approach it within your organization.
Yes, thank you very much. And I would ask a very simple question, another one, please. I'm sorry for that.
No, of course.
Okay. Steve mentioned that IBM made a study for the cost of data breach.
Yes.
My question is, was that study depending on the GDPR fines, or they made a study for independent study for the types of breaches and its cost and so on?
It was an independent study, yes, sir. That was carried out looking at all of the reported breaches during the last 12 months. It wasn't focused solely on GDPR, and it was global. And it's looks at everything to try and get an understanding of the costs of data breach for businesses. Coming from IBM, it's probably slightly biased towards persuading you to purchase their security solutions, but I think the information that it contains is pretty valid. Okay. I can send you a link to get it if you. I think Amy's got your email address, and I'm quite happy to send you a link if you're brave enough to click on it.
Yes, I would love that, please. Yes,
Brilliant.
please.
No worries
Thanks,
at all.
Yasser. Anybody
Thank you
else on
very
the call? Any questions that you may have? Okay. Well, guys, just to wrap up, I want to say thank you for Steve. Thank you to Kevin for your attendance, your useful insights on this call. Couldn't have done it without you two guys, so thank you so much. Amy for organising it yet again. Likewise, Amy has your contact details, and you have her. So if there are any other questions that come to light post the call about anything we've discussed today, or just to get in contact with us to discuss anything else, please do let us know. But if there's nothing else at the moment, guys, what I want to say is thank you so much for your attendance, and we look forward to speaking to you on further webinars in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.